to Satsang. It's not too cold for everyone, is it? Yeah, okay. I was talking to them, we're going to see whether we can get like some kind of campfire thing going, a couple of those to keep people warm. So we're on the job to see if we can figure out some way to keep you warm and cozy. How do we overcome a karmic pattern if we quickly want to cut or overcome our karmic lessons and karmic cycles? How do we overcome a karmic pattern if we want to quickly cut down or overcome our karmic lessons and karmic cycles? Asked by Prachi. There's only one way given of freeing ourselves of this cycle of birth and death and rebirth, birth, death, rebirth, birth, death, rebirth. This cycle that we're all on, like hamsters on treadmills, over and over and over again. And that one way is surrender. Only one way. There's a beautiful teaching in the Bhagavad Gita because Bhagavan Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. And Arjuna is saying, I don't want to fight this war because if I fight this war, I'm going to basically get bad karma. Like if I raise up weapons to harm anyone, but especially my family members, my teachers, like that's some bad karma. I don't want it. And therefore, I'm going to go and I'm going to become a sadhu, a renunciant, a monastic, and I'll go up and meditate. And Bhagavan Krishna, the divine God in form, essentially says to him, not so fast. It's not the matter of the cave or the battlefield. The point is, whatever you do is accruing this karmic fruit. You think that if you go off into a cave, you're going to somehow not act and therefore not accrue this karmic fruit. But you can't not act. He says, essentially, you can close your eyes, you can sit on your hands, you can stick earplugs in your ears, you can do whatever you want, but you're always acting. A, the mind is always active, but B, acts of omission, meaning things that we don't do, are just as much acts as acts of commission, things we do. So I'm walking down the street, somebody falls down in front of me. Two options. Either I help him or I don't. Right? You've only got two choices in that situation. Do you bend down? Do you stop? Or do you not? If you do, you bend down, you help him. Good deed, you get. What we would colloquially call good karma, but is actually just the fruits of good karma, meaning sweet fruit. When it blossoms, it's going to feel good. It's going to be pleasant. However that action blossoms back in your life, the repercussions will be sweet and pleasant. You don't help him. Well, that's also an action. You don't have to actually kick the guy when he's down in order to be not doing what you are supposed to do. Simply walking by him, ignoring him. It's not unaction or non-action. It's action. It's just an act of omission, meaning not doing that which I should have done. It's also going to have karmic repercussions. They will be not so sweet, not so pleasant. But Bhagavan Krishna makes it really clear that not acting, as in walking by the guy who has fallen down, not putting food on the table for your family, not fulfilling your duties or dharma, that is not the opposite of action. That is not the solution to accruing this karmic fruit. Because you accrue the karmic fruit for not doing your actions. So Arjuna then says, well then, so what to do? If ultimately the goal is not simply to eat pleasant fruit, right? Because that's where most of us begin. I want good karma. Things should feel pleasant. It's the first stage. The first stage that says I want out of suffering. Therefore, I will do good actions. Therefore, I will receive fruits of those actions, repercussions, that feel good. Certainly better than feeling bad. But ultimately, that's not the highest goal. The highest goal is just not to feel good. It's not to do good things so you get good things in return. The ultimate goal is to be free of the cycle of birth and death. To be free of the karmic package. Because even things that feel good are things you've got to keep coming back and taking birth for. If you've got a whole bank account full of feel-good karmic fruit, well, you still have to take birth in order to come back and experience all of that. Now again, on a just human individual level, you think, well, what's the problem? If all I'm going to do is have things that feel good, why not? Like, sure, I'll come back, why not? But ultimately, the goal is not to just keep taking human bodies in order to feel good. Ultimately, the goal is to recognize I'm not the body. I'm not this dichotomy between pleasant, unpleasant, nice, not nice, success, failure. Ultimately, I am that which was never born, that which never dies. I am the very presence, that capital P presence, in which everything else is happening. And to identify as a good feeling, or as the one who's having a good feeling, is to really limit yourself, to really box yourself up, to say, I'm this body, I am the present experience that I'm having, this pleasant moment. Whereas spirituality is all about realizing I'm not that. So Arjuna says, well, then what to do? If I've got to keep coming back life after life, whether to get bitter fruit or to get sweet fruit, to get pleasant experiences or to get unpleasant experiences, how do I break free? Because these actions, they don't counter each other out. It's not like a normal bank account where if I put in $10 and I withdraw $10, my balance is zero. In the karmic bank account, you put in 10 plus points, you've got 10 pleasant things coming back. Or one pleasant thing that's 10 times as large as just a single thing. You put in 10 what could be considered negative points, minus points, places where you brought about harm and pain rather than bringing about healing and help, well, you're going to have those fruits, and they do not cancel each other out. So Arjuna says what to do. And Bhagavan Krishna says the only thing to do is recognize you're not the doer. As you identify as the doer of good, the doer of bad, the enjoyer of the pleasant results, the one who is suffering in the unpleasant results, as long as that's who you think you are, you got to keep coming back and doing this all over again. The only way out of the game is surrender it all to me. It's a beautiful passage. I mean, there's many beautiful passages, but there's one that's very beautiful that says, Yat karoshi yadashnasi, yajjahoshi dadasiyat, yat tapasyasi konteya, tat kurushva madarpanam. And it means whatever you do, whatever part of your body it's done through or comes through, offer it to me. Through your mouth, through your hands, through your words, through your legs, through anything you do, including all the sadhana you do, right? All those rituals, everything you do, the yagna ceremony you do, the arti you do, the pujas you do, the prayers you do, the beautiful work you do. Surrender it all to me. So you don't even get to claim doership as in, I did 10 malas of my mantra today. I meditated 2 hours today. Even that, give it all to me. You're not even the doer of the meditation. You're not even the doer of the prayers. You're not the doer of the yagnas. Not the doer of the tapasya. I am the doer, I being Krishna. I am the doer. You are the vehicle through which it is happening. And recognizing that is your only way out. So, to Prachi's question about the way to shortcut or overcome or quickly speed up this karmic journey, you can't, unfortunately, it's not like, things on your phone where you can play things at 1.5 speed or 2 speed, or you can fast forward a video at, 8 times, 16 times really fast. You can't, unfortunately, do that to your karmic journey. But the moment that you realize it's all God, I'm just the vehicle through which it's happening. It's like if I sat here and I started swearing profanities and I started criticizing, condemning, like really bad stuff about a variety of different people or a variety of different religions, or just in general, really violent words, harmful words, would you blame my microphone? Would you say, oh my God, that is like the worst, rudest microphone I've ever seen? You understand, the microphone's just relaying to you what I am speaking. Now you're hearing it from the microphone. Only Preeti and Rohan sitting here really close are actually mostly hearing it from my mouth. You're all getting it because I've got this microphone on. It's coming from the speakers. But you'd never say, my God, that is the rudest microphone I've ever seen. And in the same way, if I gave a really beautiful lecture, or if I were someone who could sing and I sang a really beautiful song, the microphone would never stand up and how about a round of applause for me as the best microphone? Because we understand, and the microphone understands. It's just a tool. I'm the one who's speaking. But actually the truth is I'm no more the one who's speaking than the microphone is the one who's speaking. And it's just as ignorant and wrong and in illusion for me to stand up and take a bow and say, hey, wasn't that a great speech or a great song, or as it would be for the microphone too. And that's the way out of the game, is to realize I'm an instrument. I'm an instrument in God's hands. Realize you are like the microphone. You're just the instrument. And when you really surrender fully and completely to that, that's when we are able to then free ourselves from that whole karmic game, from all of the karmic cycles. And so we surrender. But we surrender, surrender without gyan or wisdom ends up becoming just excuses, justifications. Well, it wasn't me, I'm just an instrument, right? I'm not the one who really did that. Don't blame me. Right? You hear that a lot from people who pull spiritual teachings out of context, or who read a passage but don't actually meditate on it deeply and just use it to justify how they're living. So when you realize that you're just an instrument, then all of the things that lead us to act in ways that cause harm, well, they automatically stop. Because the universe doesn't have anger or hatred or jealousy or lust or greed. So to blame something that was done out of any of those emotional states is just displacing blame ignorantly. That was not an instrument, because the universe doesn't act like that. And we know that that's true because you never see, apples knock oranges out of the tree. Right? You never see anything in nature harm anything else in nature without only the agenda of their own survival. Right? So the food chain, of course, works in a certain way that lions eat zebras. You watch those National Geographic videos and you're always rooting for the zebra. It's always like, go, 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 And the poor lion is chasing it, and for some reason, there's something in all of our hearts that just always wishes that the zebra could run faster and the lion wouldn't catch it. But ultimately, the lion also has to eat. The lion also has a family. That's also his right to have food, and the zebra happens to be the food of the lion. But nothing in nature harms anything unless it needs to for its food or for its survival. It's only the human ego and these vasanas, these aspects of our senses, our illusions, our vices, that lead us to act in ways that cause harm. So surrender leads us to being just an instrument. And you'll discover that when you're just an instrument, suddenly actions of hatred and anger and greed and jealousy and all of that, they don't flow through you, because that isn't the energy of the universe. And whenever you feel like you're about to act out of one of those things, just surrender. Just surrender to the divine. Hey, here I am, your instrument. Use me. And just find whatever mantra reminds you of that, or whatever word of the divine reminds you of that. And surrender. I'm just an instrument. Just here to be an instrument. It's the only way. The only way out of this cycle. Great question. Other questions? Any question that anyone here has? Yeah. You can just come up to the microphones. They've put the mics on the stand.
Thank you so much for sharing the insights, first of all. I am staying here for like last 1 week and feeling truly blessed being here. Thank you so much. Whenever I look at Gita or I see the pictures of Mahabharata, when I see Krishna sitting on the chariot and driving the 5 horses and Arjuna together, I try to flip that and see how it is mapping to my life. So the way I see it, these 5 horses are our 5 basically senses.
Mm-hmm.
And then, our mind basically is the thread or
Yes.
the rope which is pulling it. And Krishna is our soul, which is driving our mind. And our body and our karms are like Arjun.
Mm-hmm.
So for Arjuna, he had Krishna, and he was able to connect with Krishna. For us, it is our soul, and we understand that we have a soul, and we need to connect to it. We do the meditations, we do, we try to be righteous and do the right things. Yet, a lot of times it is so difficult to connect with our soul, to realize ourselves. I'm wondering, you have already walked on those paths, and I'm wondering if you can share any insights through which we can connect with our souls.
Beautiful. So how do we connect with our soul? That presence of Krishna, Krishna's driving Arjun's chariot, right there with him, guiding him, giving him 700 verses of what the truth is. And for us, how do we find that? Well, here's what I've learned personally, is if I'm really quiet, it's there. It's not that you actually have to go out in search of it. It's that you have to remove the distractions to it. The reason that we have such a difficult time connecting is when most of us sit down to meditate, our mind goes, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do that project for work. That's going to take me 20 hours and I don't have time, and it means I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight, and it's so unfair because, I do all of the work, but he gets all of the credit. And I hate this. This has been my whole life. So that's what most of our meditations sound like. Or we sit and we begin with our mantra, and then we say, someone's making blueberry muffins. God, those smell so good. God, I remember the blueberry muffins that I used to get on the way to school when I was a kid. Mom would drive me and we'd stop for muffins. Oh, those were such great days, God. God, I miss those days. God, I wish I could eat blueberry muffins without gaining 10 pounds in 5 minutes. God, yeah, those were the days. Oh, God, got to exercise today. I'm really just getting, So maybe the meditation goes in that direction. But you get the idea. We're sitting here, posture's right. But the mind, we're not connecting to the soul. The mind is just on and on and on and on, whatever comes to it. And of course, the stream of consciousness demonstration that I've just done for you, as absurd as it seems, is actually much more lucid and coherent than most of our streams of consciousness. If you actually watch your mind, it's much worse than just the complaint about the job and this or the blueberry muffin connection. It actually doesn't even usually make much sense. This is why the key is, and why we practice, why we do our japa, why we meditate, why we practice mindfulness, why we practice yogasana, why we do seva, why we do so many spiritual practices. They all have their own different benefits or punya as well. But on one level, what they all do is they give us the opportunity, the possibility of just a little bit of space in the mind in which the truth of who we are can emerge. Because what you'll find is when you are quiet, if you think back to times where you did experience soul, if we went around and I said to you all right, tell me, list off for me the, five times in your life where you felt the most connected to soul, I would imagine that very few of you would give me a time in which you were squeezed into a subway car, or scrolling Facebook, or in the middle of a fight with someone, or shopping for, new clothes or new shoes. Most of the times when it happens, it's going to be things like, I was sitting on a mountaintop. I was watching the waves of the ocean. I was watching the stars in the night sky. I was in this powerful spiritual ceremony, an arti, a kirtan, something in which the power of the moment swept away my thoughts, swept away the busyness of my mind for long enough that I could actually connect. It's going to be moments like that. It's not moments where you went out looking for your soul, but it's moments where maybe you were just sitting beneath a tree. Maybe you had gone for a walk in the woods. You sat beneath a tree and you just were listening to a bird or watching an ant build an anthill. You were just being quiet. And that's why we need to work so much on quieting our minds. It's not enough to try to create quiet in the outside world, because the mind follows us. All of that nonsense follows us. That's why, interestingly, couples fight more on vacation than they do at home. True statistics. You'd think, it's just the stress of day-to-day life that makes us fight. Actually, it's our inability to manage our own minds and emotions that causes most of the fights. And on vacations, you've got so much more time because you're not so busy. And social science statistics show that couples fight a lot more on vacation than they do at home. So don't think that the answer to everything that's wrong with your marriage is, a trip to Goa or Tahiti or somewhere. It's about working with your own mind that actually causes it. So in the same way, transporting yourself to a beach in the Caribbean doesn't actually connect you to soul, because you take your mind with you. It's what in psychology we call pulling a location. Meaning, I think that if I just changed my surroundings, suddenly everything would feel better. It only would work if you could leave your mind at home. And this is where we have to work on the mind. Because the mind is what blocks us from seeing the truth of who we are. The dilemma becomes that the way that most of us work on the mind just strengthens the mind. So we watch the mind, we see it jump all over the place, and then we go, oh my God, my stupid mind. Just stop, enough already, for God's sakes. And we're just making more noise in there. And that's why all of the practices of meditation are not about fight off your mind. Subdue your mind in some way, whatever it takes, just subdue it. Doesn't work. Whoever and whatever you oppress and suppress and repress eventually is going to revolt. You can repress people and oppress them for hundreds of years, but eventually, guarantee it, you get a revolution. Whether it's people of certain colors, certain races, certain religions, certain genders, whatever it is, you squeeze something down long enough, eventually it's gonna revolt. And the mind does exactly that same thing. It just doesn't take a few hundred years. It takes just a couple of seconds. The more you try to push it down, the more it revolts. The only way around it is we give it something to do. You give it a mantra. You give it your breath. You give it a candle flame. You give it some work to do. You give it something to do. And by work, I don't mean something that you're going to gain from. I mean, this is the benefit of seva, is it's not for me. Whatever it is I'm doing, whether I'm sweeping the floor or stuffing envelopes or designing a website or chopping carrots, doesn't matter. But I'm doing it to purify my mind. I'm doing it not for me, but as an act to purify my own mind. And eventually, through a combination of all of these practices, you'll find some spaciousness in your mind. The other thing that I have found personally really helpful is a practice of introspection and contemplation, which is different than meditation. You don't want to mix them up, because meditation is not your time for contemplation. But contemplation is also very important. And if I notice that my mind is being filled with stuff that is pulling me away from that connection to soul, if I notice that when I sit to meditate, there's something that keeps coming up and blocking me from that spaciousness, well, in my contemplation, in my introspection, I'm going to look at it. What is it? And then you say to yourself, essentially, is it worth it? Like, usually the stuff that comes up are unfulfilled expectations, right? You want something, it's not quite happening. Somebody's annoying you. These are the things that fill up most of our minds. This person is bothering me. This thing I want to happen isn't happening. And you ask yourself, is it worth it? Is every minute that I am not in connection with my soul because my mind is on this person, on this thing, is it worth it? Even if I get the thing, fine, imagine, end of the day, mil gaye. Is it worth it? No. Because you've lost. You've lost what you're here for. And so bring in a practice of contemplation that looks at what is the stuff of my mind. And some of it is nonsense. Some of it is just monkey mind nonsense. Ignore it. When it arises, just chant your mantra. Don't even get into its game. That is not the stuff you need to look at, process, pay attention to. Nothing. It's just monkey mind. Ignore it, chant your mantra instead. But when you notice the same stuff, that it keeps coming up and it's coming up and it's coming up, look at it. Is it worth it? Is anything anyone did to you worth not being able to connect with your soul? Is any way that anyone has harmed you, betrayed you, cheated you worth not having that connection? Is anything you want, the money, the job, the prestige, the following on social media, the house, the car, whatever it is that you are craving for, is it worth giving up that which you actually took birth for? And of course the answer is always no. And so the moment that you really recognize this in your contemplation, in your introspection, that, oh my God, my mind, my conscious mind that's craving these things, not just on my subconscious level, but on my actual conscious level, yeah, I want it, give it over here, is shooting myself in the foot. I am depriving myself. I am essentially kicking Krishna out of my chariot. Go, I'm dreaming of Bloomingdale's. Get out of my chariot. Unless you can bring me, 1 million followers on Facebook, get out of my chariot. Unless you can bring me a Mercedes car, get out of my chariot. It's essentially what we're saying. I don't want to hear it until I've got what I want. Until you can punish that person, put them in their place, remove them from my life, I don't want to hear it. Krishna's there. We're the one who keeps pushing him as we fill up the space between us with more and more junk. So really ask yourself, is it worth it? Is anything you're thinking about so important as to really be worth the spaciousness, the emptiness that is fullness? I mean, you've got to answer that question for yourself, but for me, the answer is always a resounding no. And just lastly, go back to the surrender. Just, Hey, Krishna, I'm here. I'm going to clear out as much room in my chariot as I possibly can. Please, come. And just please remind me whenever my chariot gets too full. Whenever it seems like there isn't room for you here, remind me so that I can clean my chariot. You're the only one I want in my chariot. Other questions? Yes.
We are all connected.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Come. Sure. And then we'll take yours.
If we are all connected, how can we live with all these atrocities which are happening actually in the world?
Yes. If we are all connected, how do we live with these atrocities that are taking place on our planet? By opening our hearts, allowing our hearts to crack, to break, but not getting wrapped up in the tunnel vision of what news and social media show us. Because, there's a lot of atrocities taking place on our planet today. recent ones in the Middle East, ones prior to that in Ukraine, ones ongoing in Sudan, and I mean there's so many other places wherever you look. People are being killed in gang warfare in inner cities, certainly across America, probably across the world. Women are being raped. Girls are having their genitals cut. I mean, and this is stuff that's been going on hundreds and thousands of years. Certainly hundreds of years. There's no limit to the atrocities that are taking place. Rivers are being polluted. I mean, we're one not only with humans, we're one with animals. Think about the number of animals that are being killed every year so we can have hamburgers and hot dogs and chicken McNuggets. Think about the rats in whose eyes moisturizers and shampoos and mascaras and all the cosmetics that we use are being smeared to be tested for safety. That's how they test them. Long before things end up on the shelf that we're allowed to buy them, well, somebody has to make sure that they don't cause adverse reactions. Well, how do they test it? They test them on animals. Unless you buy brands that specifically say not tested on animals, cruelty-free, you can be sure your mascara, your lipstick, your cream, your shampoo, your whatever it is, was smeared in the eyes, on the skin of bunny rabbits, of other animals. So, I mean, we could do it all night. There is atrocity after atrocity. Rivers are being polluted and dried up. Trees are being cut down. Indigenous people have been losing their homelands for far too long. And people are getting married and having babies, helping each other across the street, donating organs, kidneys to each other, donating blood, working in soup kitchens, building schools, building hospitals, running free medical camps, helping each other across the street, carrying each other's groceries, little things, big things. It's all happening simultaneously. And so no, we can't ignore the atrocities, but also we can't ignore the rest. For every child who's being murdered in hatred, a child is being born into a family that's going to love it, and being coddled and adored and welcomed into the world. And for every woman who's being raped and harmed and abused, a girl is being sent off to school, given an opportunity for the first time. So we must act in whatever ways we can to bring about peace and love and equality, rights, help to this planet, to the humans, to the animals, to Mother Nature. But we also must not lose our minds, because when we lose our minds, we become not only miserable and crazy, but we become completely ineffective and ineffectual at helping anyone. If I am so filled with rage and hatred about what those people are doing to my people, or even just what those people are doing to those people, even if I don't identify as anyone being mine, well, I'm certainly not helping that situation. And what it also does is it gives me tunnel vision to not see the person who really needed help carrying her groceries out to the car. Because I'm so full of anger and hatred and stress at what is happening in some other part of the world, that I can't see the beauty before my eyes, and I can't see the opportunities that I have to bring more beauty. So we must open our eyes and open our hearts to all of it. We are connected. But all of it is not only the misery and suffering. All of it is the love and the joy. And to recognize that we have a limited capacity. I could stand in front of a river full of water, but I can only drink a little bit. Even if I want to drink the whole river, even if the river is gorgeous, it's flowing with beautiful water, I want to drink it all, I cannot. I have a very limited capacity in my human body of actually how much water I can take in. I could stand in front of infinite blueberry bushes, and no matter how many blueberries I wanted to eat, eventually I would hit a limit. No more room. No matter how beautiful the blueberries are, no more room. I cannot take any more in. And in the same way, no matter how much we want to help, to heal, to fix, to change, we also have limits. And so we do the very best, the most we can, but we don't feel bad that we cannot drink up the river or feed every empty belly on the planet. We recognize the capacity of this human existence. Beautiful, thank you. Yeah. Last.
Thank you so much for sharing these insights. They're pretty blissful and of great help. Just a follow-up question to the question just before the one which you addressed a while ago. Even after doing a lot of introspection also, if the thoughts are very profound and still creates a lot of chatter in your mind, even if after a lot of great insight and thoughtfulness about that but profound thought, you still are not being able to conquer what you want you to do in terms of calming down your mind, controlling your mind, clearing that chatter, and still stay where you are. Because I've been reading a lot and I know that there are certain meditation techniques in which you can just stop your thoughts. You can keep your mind absolutely clear without any thought. And then you reach a stage which is very blissful. Little insight on this will be of help. Thank you.
So I wish there were a magic wand technique. If someone out there invented a technique whereby instantly all of your thoughts stopped, you immediately were able to create a still mind, that person would be not just incredibly famous and successful, but would be worthy of being bowed down to by every single person on the planet. There isn't, unfortunately, a magic wand. What we have is practice. What we have is grace. And it all goes together. So for example, as I was speaking about letting go in our introspection and contemplation, well, the more that I have consciously decided I'm not going to let bother me, the fewer things fill my mind when I sit to meditate. And yes, there's still the monkey mind. It still bounces all over the place. This is why we begin by giving it something to do. I'm not aware of any technique that stills the mind, completely emptying it of thoughts without giving it something else to do. Unless being, shot in the head and killed. I mean, really, like you would have to be brain dead in order for that to happen. Other than the only experiences in my life that I've ever had that experience or heard of that experience is when it's just the grace of the Guru or a spontaneous experience of spiritual grace. So I have had that experience not as a result of meditative practice, a handful of times in my life. And every time has just been either because of the presence, the touch of the Guru, or just in a spontaneous grace of the divine on the banks of Ganga, or in a moment where it just happened. But it doesn't last forever. You've still got to go back to the practice. It's exquisite and amazing when it's there. But eventually it ends. Whether it lasts a few minutes or it lasts a few hours, it's not going to last forever. Eventually, you have to develop a practice to get back to that state. And this is our meditative practices. And some practices focus on a mantra, some focus on the breath, some focus on a candle flame, some focus on the chakras. I mean, there's a lot of different techniques. But that's exactly what they all are, is a technique to give the mind something to do, essentially keeping it busy over here, while the mind, the rest of the mind, becomes very still. Because when what you give it to do is a mantra or the breath, it stops the thoughts. I also have a personal technique that I use, and I can't tell you if it's necessarily going to work for anyone. It's not a technique that I teach, because again, I don't have any way of knowing if it's necessarily going to work for anyone, but it works for me, where when my mind feels like it's just that monkey mind nonsense, there's not a particular thing that's bothering me, but it's just, we all have days where there's just so much that's going on, and there's so much kind of frenetic energy that you sit to meditate. And it's all over the place. Or you lie down to go to sleep and you're all over the place. And what I have found is that if I can, I'm going to try to explain this verbally, if I can literally watch my mind, and I don't mean it just by anchoring in awareness. I mean literally like turning my eyes essentially up, and I'm trying to stare into my brain, like watching a movie. The simple act of turning myself onto myself, of just literally watching it bounce around, actually I have found causes it eventually to get quiet. But again, I'm not sure that that's necessarily something that will work for other. Please try it. I hope it works for you all. It's different than the simply being aware of it, because it's much more intentional in the watching. It's much more of a visual experience than just an awareness-based experience. It's literally like I try to take my visual field energy and look up at all of the neural activity happening in my brain and watch it. And watch it just bounce around all over the place. And eventually it quiets down. But I think what you'll find is that if you practice all of these techniques together, you will absolutely find that stillness in the mind. You absolutely will find it. The monkey mind is absolutely tameable. And if you can work with the other stuff, the vasanas, the desires, the fears, the expectations, if you can work with that, such that all you're left with is the monkeyness, you can absolutely quiet it. You can absolutely find spaciousness in it. Yeah, great. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. I look so forward to seeing you tomorrow. And also I wanted to be sure to mention for those of you staying in the ashram, but also those of you not staying in the ashram, that in addition to our beautiful Ganga Arati, from which hopefully most of you have, or all of you have come into Satsang, we also have 2 yoga classes every day and meditation classes. We have a class in the morning at 6:30, a class in the afternoon at 3:30. The morning is mostly yogasanas. The afternoon is mostly meditation, but some movement to guide you into it. We also have a beautiful fire ceremony, a yagna in the morning at 8:30. The yoga takes place in the back garden in the mornings, and afternoon venue changes. But there's a schedule up in our reception area when you leave from satsang. If you go out this way, there's a schedule up. And if you go out that way and grab your shoes, just come around and come into the reception and you'll see a schedule up there. The fire ceremony in the morning takes place in our sacred grove of ancient trees that's just next to the Ganesh temple in the courtyard. So you're all of that is open to everyone, whether you're staying with us or not. So hope that you'll join us for all of our beautiful full day of spiritual activities. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow night. So much love.